Hello, Trash Future listeners. This episode was recorded with the intention of coming out as a bonus in a couple of weeks. However, due to basically the entire cast getting COVID or some other kind of incapacitation, we have decided to put it out now. We're aware, second movie episode in a week. We don't normally do this. We also had some technical difficulties. Our apologies again. Promise it'll get better, hopefully. In the meantime, please enjoy our episode about the Netflix BBC Media themed film Scoop.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second in an emerging series where we talk about movies with monosyllabic imperative names. First, we had Lift, and now we have Scoop.
I'm excited to see where we can go from here, you know? Like, so far we're going through the checklist of stuff you do after your dog shits in a park.
Yeah. Scoop and Lift, two key areas of the Turkish ice cream man's toolkit.
It's very different places, though. My thing is we have to see Bag next, and then, like, Dispose.
I was going to say, like, the third in the trilogy would surely be called, like, Heave or something.
Ooh, Heave. Yeah, I'd love to see Heave.
Hoist.
Yeah. Hey, Lift, Scoop, Heave, Hoist,
Hang.
Hesse.
Hello.
Hello, and welcome back to Seeking Derangements and Movie Mindsets, Hesse Deni. Hesse, how's it going? You ready to talk about another legitimately great movie with us?
Yes, of course. I love Scoop. I love the BBC now. This is a fantastic movie about how they just accidentally put an idiot in front of the camera who basically said, I am a pedophile.
Yeah.
And how courageous they are for doing
Genuinely. You may remember this as a news story. And then they decided to make that news story into a movie for no reason I can determine.
I think it's really refreshing that we're making movies that the sort of premises of it is like, what if you just sent an email?
Yeah.
In fairness, that does make it a psychological horror movie.
You know, so I'm a journalist by background, as most listeners know. I remember when I first started out, there were like a few journalism movies because like that was about the time that like it was the Snowden stuff happened. And there were a few like Snowden movies. And the way in which they sort of, you know, were framing journalists as kind of being these real speak truth to power.
The Fifth Estate with Cumberbatch with the fucked up hair. Yeah.
There were like a few Snowden movies that came out.
A little bit of one crept into one of the Bourne Identity movies where there's a Guardian journalist who gets domed off by the CIA.
There was one I was thinking about.
Domed off?
Yeah, he gets domed off at like Liverpool Street Station. Yeah, it's like a CIA team comes into Liverpool Street Station and like perfectly domes him off.
This goes like cross-eyed like Dan Aykroyd in Ghostbusters.
To discredit him, I assume.
No one will ever believe any of my other work now that I've gone.
It's like in Swordfish when they make Hugh Jackman, is it? Try to hack something while getting head, but he has to write both sides piece about trans people's rights while getting head.
There was like one film that I remember. No, it was about WikiLeaks. And the sort of Guardian's involvement in it. And the reason why is because our friend and yours, James Ball, or a character that represents him, is featured in it. And there's this point, it's like very minor, but it's just like he basically gets handed like a USB key with all the secrets. And like this is supposed to be this really exciting moment where like, oh, you know, like this, you know, this wonder kid who he was sort of presented at a time where they said like suddenly has like access to all these like documents, but he has to like really make sure he doesn't lose them between going on the tube. And like for some reason like Radiohead's playing in the background.
This is a horror movie for like ADHD people.
Yeah.
Where it's like you have to keep a USB key, keep it labeled, and not lose it.
This was my commute in here with my phone and my charger. Genuinely.
I have lost USB keys on my way to places that have not been. I lost like a car, like, you know, one of those things you put in the car like to hold your phone when you're driving. Between like my driveway and my house, I still have no idea where it is.
This is how you structure a movie, right? Is that like immediate like conflict and tension is you have the USB key, you don't want to lose it. Rising action is you lose it, and then the denouement is they bring out the tube thing that lets them grab stuff off the tracks.
Yeah.
Well, what I was going to say was that like it's very difficult, I think, to like frame journalism as exciting in films. So that's why it just shouldn't be on there. Like All the President's Men did it. Like you don't need, I think like that's the best you can do. And you've really got to sign up to the idea that, like, yeah, this is a film about letters. Emails are just boring as shit. this is a film that really tried to do that. But like the element of it is very much like she sent an email and they were like, yeah, sure, let's do it. That was it. That's it.
Yeah,
That's kind of
film
Anyway.
that makes a real climactic use of the fax machine, though, which I do appreciate.
The best part is at the beginning of the movie, she's like, I'm the one who gets the people you can't just email. And then it shows that they do get them because she sends an email that says, we would love to talk to like 7 people.
Yeah. Well, the trick is when it's people you can't just email, you have to email another guy who then goes and talks to them in person.
She doesn't even do that. She just emails him.
Yes.
So I want to take us back because we've been going scoop mad. We all have scoop madness.
Scoopliosis.
We have scoopliositis. We're all going to go get cosplay as our favorite characters from Scoop next time there's a Scoop release.
I might do, to be fair.
Scoop is it's a new generation, I think, of made-for-TV movie, which is a made-for-Netflix movie, a direct-to-Netflix Gillian Anderson vehicle.
There's something what's really strange about it is that it's Netflix sucking off the BBC for 2 hours, which is a strange thing to do to your ostensible competitor, you know? I guess the same school of thought as the CIA and that Guardian journalist.
Well, they're also just doing like, I don't know, if you're Netflix, you look at the BBC, which basically is like an arm of the British government that is sort of funded by people that fucking hate it, then you're just like, oh, we're just doing an end zone dance. It's like, oh, you're great. It's a pat on the head.
It's patronizing. It's like, oh, check out this quaint little, like, funny little country's institution.
It's like, all right, Grandpa, let's get you to bed.
But Scoop is all about how a dramatization of the Emily Maitlis interview with Prince Andrew, a news event that happened like a couple of years ago.
You remember it. Pizza Express in Woking.
Yeah, can't sweat.
Don't know how to sweat.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would love to point out that on the poster for this movie, it says the interview that changed everything. And it really seems like they established that it didn't really change anything at all.
Absolutely.
Because the only one of the only regular people they show in this movie is this cab driver that's driving Billy Piper to Buckingham Palace at one point. And he goes, who are you going to talk to at Buckingham Palace? Hope it's not that fucking pedophile, Prince Andrew.
Although, to be honest, he's one of only several pedophiles in there, so statistically, it's got to be one of them.
Is it that pedophile or one of the other ones?
The poster has quite a sort of Brazzers vibe to it, I have to say. When you're looking at it, it's the way he's like got his back to you and he's like facing it. There's like the 3 kind of like slightly imposing women like looming over him.
Yeah. Well, that's because this is a feminist movie about girl power.
That's right.
It's so crazy because it's framed like that, but it's really not.
No.
It does such a bad job of it.
It thinks that's what it's about, but really it's about the power of the cold email, basically.
Yes.
So, look, this is a movie. If you love the news, if you're crazy about the news, and you want to see the news how the news gets
Huey
made.
Lewis.
Yeah, if you're into that.
Yeah.
If you liked this, you'll watch if you like this, you'll like this. Is The West Wing or The Newsroom, right?
Yeah,
like,
this
this
is crazy.
100% a movie for like Sorkin people who wish that there was a British Sorkin.
But this isn't it. I do want to say, like, as someone who was a Sorkin person, in a very limited sense, because again, like, you know, the WikiLeaks thing, the Newsroom, it all came at the same time.
It
did influence me as a
sure.
person for a very brief period of time. This is not it. This is not. And like structurally, it's not. It's written very bland. It's a very Netflix film in that sense.
I'm going to do a quick summary of like the overall situation, and then we're going to go
just in case you don't know. Like, you know.
So first of all, Prince Andrew is a pedophile.
Yeah. First of all, he's the son of the Queen. May she rest in peace.
All right, 1066, Norman Conquest.
The Battle of Tours, 732.
1805, oceans are now battlefields.
Okay, so if you remember, right, when the Roman Empire leaves Britannia, they also leave the money, they bring the money economy with them, and then the country reverts back to like market towns and trade and barter.
Also a lot of pederasty.
Yes,
which
that's right.
sets the tone.
Which the Windsors bring back.
Yeah, for sure.
The Druids.
Yeah, of course. All right, so Pangea basically was a supercontinent.
They never really address Andrew's like powerful druidism at any point.
Basically, this is a movie about Sam McAllister, played by Billy Piper. She's the sort of point of view character.
She was Newsnight's booker. She's the one who like arranged this interview as a producer, and then she wrote a book about it, of which this movie is an adaptation. And she got a lot of like PR about this, and because she's very like visually compelling, because she like dresses like shit as opposed to everyone else in her job. This is a compelling narrative to adopt. They try and force like a class thing into it too. So because she's Billie Piper and because she's wearing like leopard skin Chanel everywhere, she's like also like working class, which is not a correlation I've observed before, but
a working class BBC segment producer.
Classic BBC Newsnight
who's often
producer.
being talked down to by her black colleagues.
Oh, we'll talk about
because
that
she
guy,
shows up 6 hours late. They're like, can you please stop coming in late for work? And then later in the movie, she's like, why does everyone hate me at my job?
Yeah, and Billie Piper's like over enunciating all of her lines. So she's like, I get interviews with people you can't just email.
Sam McAllister was subject to a lot of microaggressions at the BBC because she's from Guernsey. Like, she would come into the office and people would be like, oh, have any Channel Islands milk this morning, Sam? Or evaded any tax this morning, Sam? You know, just that kind of stuff that people don't think anything of, but it really grinds you down over time.
When she brings a latte and they're like, oh, you pay VAT on that, Sam? Bring your own milk?
It is like an all-time entrant in a kind of recurring British class analysis thing of being like, well, this woman dresses tackily as shit. She must be poor.
So basically,
but she drinks coffee, so
true.
Ambiguous.
She doesn't take any shit. Actually, it is a follow-on on a West Wing thing, which is the endless quest for the good Republican, right? Where it's like, she's the outsider, and she's like, you know, she gets things done, but not by the book, and she like rattles all of these cages.
It's sort of implied she's also quite right-wing by BBC standards.
She gets called a bit Daily Mail by like her direct report at the BBC.
But then the first story she tries to pitch is leading NewsHour with an interview with Lupita Nyong'o about colorism, which doesn't really track with like being a Daily Mail kind of right wing.
I would also say, based on that, I don't think the Daily Mail comment is necessarily like wholly like a political, based on political leaning. It's very much more, it's a sort of comment on like Newsnight being, the way that BBC Newsnight is framed in this as being like, you know, very intellectual and bourgeois, which like I would describe it as I wouldn't describe it as that.
No.
You know what Newsnight is? Newsnight is the show that showed the nation Corbyn edited into like a Stalin cap.
Yes. And the way that Sam McAllister is framed is like, oh, you know, she's very like her instincts are very tabloid, right? It's very, you know, it's not the sort of intellectual rigor that one would expect from Newsnight. And to which I would say, citations needed on that. Like perhaps
there is a right wing dimension to it. Like she has a little like Trump thing on her desk and a Blair.
Oh, I didn't
thing
notice that.
Yeah. It's like just in little reaction shots.
That's very clever.
Yeah, but when she's trying to be like, oh, you know, the BBC could stand to be a bit more tabloid because the tabloids are hungry. It's like, yeah, but the tabloids are also hungry in like a right wing way, in which the like woke BBC blob like disapproves of.
The tabloids are hungry in the same way that like a leopard is hungry.
The sarlacc is hungry.
I want to start from the very beginning, though, right? Because we're jumping ahead to
we have to start with someone really sympathetic, a News of the World paparazzo.
Yeah.
So News of the World paparazzo, New York,
He's
2010.
in the apartment from Black Rain that looks out on the bridge.
Yeah.
You can hear Les Savvy Fav doing cocaine with Cobra Snake in the background. It's New York, it's 2010, it's Vice do's and don'ts. That's what we're doing.
It was a mistake to let Jeffrey Epstein write that article for Vice. If the trafficked child does not feel loved, she will leave.
We did mushrooms with Jeffrey Epstein for 24 hours. Here's what we learned.
So, there's this News of the World tabloid journalist, a tabloid photographer, a paparazzo, basically the same guy that like fucking iced Diana, essentially, and Type, is just basically camped out across the street from Epstein's house, just taking pictures of the people coming and going. And then he has to go get a picture of Prince Andrew talking with Jeffrey Epstein, because it wasn't enough just to know that they hung out all the time and there's documentary evidence of it. We need a picture of them walking in the park together. And what I found noticed about this, the only observation of it is, again, it's framed like an action movie.
Yeah.
But for an action movie, there need to be stakes. And the stakes of this were pedophile immune from public scrutiny, faces scrutiny, sees no consequences.
Yeah, well, like they do a bit with the paparazzo where it's like lightly implied that if like royalty protection catch up with him, they might like take his SD card.
It would be so funny if he went up to them and took a picture of them together and Jeffrey Epstein just pulled out a gun and shot him in the head or something.
If you become a billionaire, they let you do one a year.
I feel like it'd be more funny. I mean, yeah, obviously It would be a lot more funny if they got like one of the caricature guys in Central Park to like do like a little draw.
That's how they catch him. Oh my
Yeah.
god.
Like a court reporter. I mean, this is the thing. Like, the movie's against itself here because that very same character later on says to Sam McAllister, "Oh yeah, I was taking photos of the guy for years. No one gave a shit because no one thought anything could happen." Which is kind of vindicated because nothing does. Like,
Or in fact, the things that happened to Jeffrey Epstein didn't come from accountability. They didn't come from like public opprobrium. They came from depression and sadness and feeling alone.
men's mental health.
It might as well be like Jeffrey Epstein falls down elevator shaft for how like random and completely unconnected to anything going on in the movie it seems.
I think this movie could have been improved if, for example, the only way for Prince Andrew to escape the accusations was for him to steal a large amount of gold bullion off of a plane, for example. I think that could have made the movie a lot better.
Yeah.
More entertaining.
Prince Andrew, played by Kevin Hart. It's an audacious choice. But
What if Emily Maitlis had to make a gun out of a vape? Like, I'm just spitballing here, but...
So then we cut forward to 2019. Sam McAllister, as we've discussed, walks into work 6 hours late, a little drunk.
she like, dumps her coat on the desk and the giant Chanel brooch on it like fucking dents the desk kind of thing. She doesn't take any shit.
And she says, "Hey,
Cool.
let's lead with Lupita Nyong'o talking about colorism." And they're like, "No, we want to get Nigel Farage back on to talk about Brexit." And it's like, okay, so wait, the stakes are like that the show that's unable to look beyond the borders of its own building and Westminster, basically. It's even the dramatization of it seems fucking boring.
Yeah.
Actually, the first story they pitch is, should we talk about England selling arms to Saudi Arabia that it's using against Yemen? And they're like, no, next.
It's like, boring shit. Get out of here.
That's not about a thing we can't because you know who you couldn't just call? You couldn't just call the guy from BAE Systems or whatever that makes the arms that go to Yemen. You would have to do some actual journalism to find the guy.
It's true.
Yeah, you'd have to talk to his son who works at the BBC.
Emailing Mohammed bin Salman, would love to talk.
Also, another really funny thing is I paused it. I wanted, because I always, whenever a movie shows a character looking at a computer screen of like emails or tweets or whatever, I think it's always funny to pause there and look at what the director imagined to like fill the space. And one of the emails that Billie Piper gets and deletes is that Manoush Shafiq, the current president of Columbia University, wanted to talk about her book, What We Owe to Each Other. Like, that would have been an interesting interview 5 years later, perhaps.
Yeah.
But yeah, you don't want easy interview subjects, is her position, right? Because then you're perpetuating the thing of like, oh, Newsnight is just like North London talking to itself kind of thing.
It is.
Sure, yeah, and like everyone is like vaguely aware that like their shit sucks. The BBC is cutting like jobs and stuff. But she does have one coworker. Well, she has a couple of coworkers who disapprove of her, but she has one coworker who is like mad at her all the time, who is black, who is, as far as I remember, the only black character, the only non-white character in the movie, who is like, your shit specifically sucks even more because it's like right-wing and not woke.
Yeah.
And it's tabloid and it's trashy.
Yeah. I am personally demanding you be woke, Billie Piper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I imagine that was like Lawrence Fox got to write one line of this movie.
Yeah, he like sort of won a contest where you get to put in like one character, you know.
So in this universe, like, Lawrence Fox doesn't believe Billie Piper to be woke. He believes that circumstances have forced her to be woke in relation to him by
I think
taking
he
his
might
kids away.
actually believe that.
The divorce courts made her woke. She
Yeah.
was ordered to be woke by a county court judge.
Oh, the judge gave me new pronouns.
Yeah, 120-day woke order.
200 hours of community service.
Yeah, that's right.
I have an ankle bracelet that goes off when I get a certain distance away from my copy of Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race.
I have to do a land acknowledgement every time I pick up a piece of garbage from the side of the highway.
Yeah, that's right.
So, Sam receives a pitch in her pitch folder after Manoush Shafiq's
Yeah.
from Buckingham Palace to talk about Pitch at Palace, where Prince Andrew's thing, which is a real thing.
Yeah, it's his real desperate like comeback attempt after all of this stuff had already been exposed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone knew it already.
Yeah.
Newsnight didn't break any
Crucially.
stories at all.
Was to go, okay, well, what if like small businesses, right? Because like Prince Andrew had this thing of like traveling a lot and doing business with some really sinister people. A lot of stuff in Central Asia, same as Tony Blair actually. But also, like, he used to like be used to like launder British arms deals. Could have been interesting to do that with the Saudi Arabia story, maybe. Anyway, but his new thing was like this small time thing where he would get a bunch of young entrepreneurs to the palace and like introduce them because of like the economy or whatever and 5G
Oh yeah.
and shit.
What's that show on the BBC? Predator's Den.
Yeah, nonsense den. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Good afternoon, nonsense. I've got a proposal for you. What if we get the sexiest teenagers we could find and put them on one convenient island?
Alan Sugar being like, now the task was to conduct a scavenger hunt and find these 12 items. But instead, what you did was operate an international network of child sex trafficking for a number of years.
You've become engaged in something that you insist is called paedophilia, but like looking at it from where I'm standing, I was raising it. That's good old-fashioned paedophilia is what that is.
So Sam gets this pitch from Amanda Thirsk, who's played by, again, very well played by Keely Hawes.
Can I just say, the cast in this movie, magnificent. I'm a huge fan of all of these women.
That's the thing. One thing I'll have to say about this movie, well acted by competent actors who were doing the best they could with some pretty shoddy material.
That's absolutely true. And
Yeah.
listen, I will always praise anything Keely Hawes is in on the basis that she's in it.
Rufus Sewell, great Prince Andrew.
Same with Romola Garai, who is Esme Wren,
Yeah.
like Billy Piper's boss, the Newsnight's producer. She's also really good.
Billy Piper, also
Yeah, also
good.
love
Just
Billy
given
Billy Piper's great.
Yeah.
Like she does
Great in
like
everything.
over enunciate all of her lines, but like it's just good.
Everyone in this movie did a great job except the writer and director.
Yeah, for real.
And the person
Yeah.
that came up with it.
And Billy Piper got to reuse the costumes from Diary of a Call Girl, so it was quite a cheap production.
I'm amazed you remember that. Like
So Sam gets a pitch from Buckingham Palace to talk about Pitch at Palace. On the same day, where photos of Prince Andrew with Jeff Epp get released. Again,
Chef Ep, as his friends call him.
Jeff E. Again, why did it take this long to release those images?
Don't worry about
I don't
it.
They were waiting
All
for
right.
a story to put him with, is what I read into it.
But so Keely Hawes plays Andrew's publicist Amanda, who is like the only person probably in the world other than his own mother who is genuinely devoted to Prince Andrew.
She's fully like played as a surrogate mum. Right. And this
Yeah.
is meant to be like an interesting dynamic is that like Andrew has been like infantilized by being royalty. And so his PR has to be very, very mumsy with him.
Mhm.
And so she's like, darling, don't you think it would be a good idea if maybe you did a bit less pedophilia? And he's like, well,
I couldn't possibly.
The best part is every time she's talking to him, she's like, we just need to get you in the room with people so they can talk to you and see that you're actually like the coolest guy on the planet.
so sweet and kind. And we see him like charm people in small settings using the kind of like fixed like royalty, putting people at their ease affect.
Yeah.
And every time he does it, she's like, oh my God, this guy's the fucking master statesman.
Yeah. When the royal family come to your house and they go, gosh, is that an air fryer? I think I've got one of those.
Yeah,
Something like that,
exactly.
When he walks into the room to do the Pitch at Palace thing, he's like, oh, lovely weather we're having. And then everyone like bursts into laughter. It's like, what the fuck?
It's just kind of like being like, well, it seems I'm a stupid piece of shit. And like she's like, this is a master communicator, and no one who could say that about themselves could possibly be a pedophile.
Yeah. People love Prince Andrew so much when they're like in a room with him in this movie that you'd expect he was one of like the Central Asian Khans who would just like cut courtiers' hands off for fun if they displeased him.
There's like another subplot where like Prince Andrew's hired another PR called like Jason Stein.
Yeah,
Jason
why is
Stein.
that in there? That guy doesn't do anything.
Yeah, for no reason. That's like
All he does is say to Amanda, you really shouldn't let him go on Newsnight with Emily Maitlis. It's a terrible idea. He's going to come off looking so
yeah,
stupid.
you have hired like one obvious man, right, who is able to see that this guy is not actually that charming, and it doesn't matter.
So I guess that the relationship between Amanda and Prince Andrew is a little bit like the relationship between Billy Piper and her son. And that's like the C plot, is Billy Piper's son is trying to talk to a girl.
Yeah, and in case you were worried that this was going to be a subtle movie, yeah, he says, "Oh, she's not in my class." because we're London urchins and we live in probably like a £2 million house.
If only I knew just what to say to teenage girls like Prince Andrew. If only there was some way of getting advice.
This interview needs to happen for my son.
Yeah. But you can't just email Prince Andrew. He's not Noam Chomsky.
So the other PR, the one who's like, again, the competent PR who's like, please don't do this.
Yeah, but basically his plan, right, is a sort of multi-year assault on the extremely servile British newspaper journalist to get Prince Andrew in one-on-one interviews with journalists they know will be subservient and be get flattering puff pieces and scale it up really slowly. And that fucking works. We've seen royals do it many times.
That's also 95% of UK journalists.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, Amanda's like, hey, come on, let's get Prince. Also, what do you want Prince Andrew on Newsnight to talk about pitch at Palace? What the fuck kind of a news segment would that be?
It's great to come to the palace and get pitched. It's really fantastic.
It's so obviously a trap. It's sort of talk about my penny ante bullshit scheme thing. It's the cardboard box propped up with a stick, you know?
My favorite moment that I guess we're pretty much there is when Gillian Anderson is in the palace, waiting in this meeting room, and she's with Billie Piper, and they're about to meet Prince Andrew for the first time, and she leans over to Billie Piper, and she's like, "Don't worry, how hard could it possibly be to talk to a royal about
quite Connery
accusations that they're a pedophile?" And it's meant to be oh, that's really hard. But then Prince Andrew walks in, and he might as well be wearing a hat with a propeller on it and going, "Hello." They told me not to tell you about the little girls.
He's played by a peon from Warcraft.
Yeah. He literally says, I was really good friends with Jimmy Savile, too.
I kind of like that as a kind of off-putting joke that he thinks is funny.
Yeah.
And to be fair, it is the funniest line in the movie. But we should talk about Mateless here, right? Because I think seldom has a British TV journalist been so mythologized. Because they do a bit of the North London talking to itself thing earlier, but they never implicate Mateless in this. She's just kind of, she or her shitty dog are traipsing the halls looking extremely dignified. And everyone's like, whoa, that's fucking Emily Mateless. She's Superwoman. No one ever sees her eat? Question mark. And it's
what?
I
didn't know that Scoop was also Thinspo. What's up?
What? A little bit, yeah, but it's just
No, because Emily Mateless photosynthesizes.
No one ever sees her eat, but they can hear it through the door. It's disgusting.
like a horse.
Emily Mateless went on to a second job as one of the ladies in black from Fade Routha's camp.
I understand Emily Mateless to be a I'm sure hardworking but basically unremarkable journalist in the a stern woman delivers you your news mold, which so many British people seem to like. It's fine.
Now, Baron Harkonnen, there are allegations that you've murdered the little slave girls because you were mad in your oil bath.
It was a technique perfected by Moira Stewart, but Mateless is a good practitioner.
Can I prevail on you to open up Twitter and search Emily Mateless's tweets for Corbyn? Just for a fun time. I know she's had some shit takes in her time.
They all do that though. That's very Peston coded as well.
Yeah.
To just tweet out a thought. It's not really a view. It's very BBC to be just well, I'm not allowed to express a view, so why don't I ask a weird question?
Koonsberg by far the worst defender on this, but Mateless is, I think of her very much as in the same kind of mold, but anytime she's on screen or mentioned, they're this is a fearsome fucking interviewer. And then you see the actual interview, the real one, and it's she goes are you a nonce? And he goes, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, no, fuck.
I didn't think consequences were real, and they're basically not, so sure.
Yeah.
Presented as the maternal figure of the nation, and if your mum asked you that question, you wouldn't lie to her, would you?
No.
No.
The best part of the interview is that she's like, "Hello, Prince Andrew," and then it cuts to one of the other producers of the show who's off to the side, and he's like, "This is going fucking horribly."
Sorry, my funniest line of the movie, we are jumping forward a bit, so I'm going to pull us back. I'm going to share this, which is that after they argue about what Emily Mateless will wear to the interview, she's standing there in a suit jacket and pants, and then Prince Andrews walks in and exclaims at the top of his lungs, "Trousers!" which
apparently is real. Like all of the weirdest Andrew shit is just stuff that everyone involved has written about in their various books about this.
And of course, like all of that's believable because he is genuinely like the oaf king.
Yeah, for sure.
He's an idiot. He's a fucking moron.
He is an idiot. That's why tonally the movie doesn't work, because it's like all this they build it up like, oh, it's going to be like two gunslingers having a battle. And then it's just that they miss the tone of like, no, this was like choking a defenseless child, but the defenseless child just resuscitates and is immune to consequences.
It's sort of like they do all this whole thing that's like, oh, we're tracking big game, and if they get spooked, like the Queen could stop it, the Director General could stop it, like his PRs could stop it. And then we like see him in the room with all those people, and they're like, "Are you sure that you want to do this?" And he's like, "Yeah,
it's fine."
That was really crazy to me. After the interview, they're like, "Oh, thank God we did it. We got the scoop. Now all we have to do is pray that the Queen doesn't call us on the phone and tell us not to air it."
And again, the more interesting implication is that like she would, and they would just do that.
Yeah, fully.
Yeah.
Very nice Emily Maitlis you've got there. Would be a shame if anything were to happen.
Would be a shame if she were to eat.
Heard she's going on a trip to Paris soon. Very dangerous tunnel.
The Queen sneaking like protein powder into Maitlis's like.
Yeah, we're bulking Emily Maitlis. No one will respect her anymore. She's got
doing mean
huge
girl
lats.
shit to Emily Maitlis to stop this thing going out.
So I'm going to bring us back into the order, right? Because the photographer is still at this point in the movie saying to Sam, "Hey, Google Ghislaine Maxwell." And so
I'm fucking Mr. Exposition, right?
Yeah.
And if Google nonsense.
Yeah, Google Ghislaine Maxwell nonce.
All of this stuff was like massive, like international news as it happened.
And then the movie, again, I paused. She clicks a Daily Mail link from 2015. Everyone knew. There's not news. You just got an idiot to embarrass himself on TV.
Yes, yeah.
So Sam then goes to the palace to meet Amanda.
And they really like hype up the kind of hypnotic effect of the palace and like proximities of power, because like she's fucking working class, so she's like, her mum like tells her to steal one of the teaspoons because they're like, you know, knees up Mother Brown cockneys or whatever, and she's about to, and she gets caught by Amanda, who's like, we kind of expect people to do that because that's how we like to run things patricianly.
They're like, that's a good sign when people are stealing spoons from us. It means they want a part of us. It's like, yeah, that's a good sign when people are taking parts of the Berlin Wall home.
I really cannot get over how much kind of like working class shit they try and like cram onto Sam McAllister in this. It's like, it's really remarkable. And it's like,
she only is ever pictured eating a kebab.
Oh, we'll talk about the fucking kebab. I have a specific kebab thought for the end.
At one point, she accidentally calls Prince Andrew boss man. That's how committed she is to the kebab lifestyle.
Just sitting down in front of Amanda Thirsk, and she's like, hello, and Sam's like, oh, bruv.
Yeah, it's a Kingsman 3. But instead of parkour, it's interviewing. It's emailing. It's news. So, what's Amanda like, asks Sam. And Amanda says, he's a very loyal friend and too loyal for his own good sometimes. And then Sam's like, why don't we get a proper drink?
It is really like well played by Keeley Hawes. Again, I'm being normal about Keeley Hawes, but it's like, it's really remarkable how well she plays up that like it's quite creepy the way all of these people act. That she's like, well, he's actually really lovely. We don't talk about the pedophilia here, kind of thing. It was well done, I thought.
Yeah, so down to the skill of the actors, really.
Yeah, for sure.
My favorite little bit of that in that scene is when Billie Piper refers to Prince Andrew as the Queen's favorite son, and she says, well, she is a very good judge of character. It's like, what the fuck kind of thing to say is that?
She's like ranking her sons, and she's so fucking good at it. The Queen is not in this, by the way, because that taboo still hadn't been broken yet, so she's still like, it's partly because I cultivated a thing about how she's like really remote and distant, and Andrew really needed someone to love him aside from like, you know, Jeffrey Epstein. But instead the result is just kind of like this void, you know.
Actually, that's not true. The Queen does have a cameo as a woman on the bus in one scene. As she does in every British movie.
We see her come out of the kebab shop.
Yeah.
She's like the British Quentin Tarantino. She's always in there. She usually says the N-word.
$2 lamb and rice.
There's a scene at the end of the movie where she does like, you know, come out of the bus with holding a kebab, and then it cuts. I don't know if you guys saw it, but it said something. It said the Queen will be back and heave.
I hate when I watch a movie for work and then I forget that there's a post-credits scene.
Yeah.
Oh, nightmare. Yeah, well, in the case of this movie, it was when the Queen and Daniel Craig skydive into the Newsnight studio after the interviews.
With Freebird playing.
So Amanda and Jason now have the first of their many arguments where Jason's like, don't do this. Absolutely don't do this. You have to understand that he's a sweaty pedophile and comes off like one.
Well, I think that people will understand if you put him in a room with a camera that he's not a sweaty pedophile because he doesn't sweat, actually.
He's a very dry pedophile.
Basically, everyone involved is like, hey, this is stupid, don't do it. Including Sam's coworkers, to be fair, are like, no, we want to have more Brexit arguments on Newsnight. We need Newsnight to be Brexit arguments.
Which is not like, it's not entirely untrue in the sense of, because one of the things that I thought touched on quite well in this film, or like much better than like the actual story itself, is the sort of state of British media post-Brexit and the kind of hysteria that it kind of these shows sort of got themselves into, particularly around like all those sort of early discourses about like news media being very completely detached from society, and this sense that, and I don't know if you remembered this or sort of remember that sort of period of time, but one where you had like BBC, like heads of the BBC, like departments and stuff, kind of committing to sort of reconnecting with broader British society, but being completely unaware of how to do that. And like there's a sort of broader conversation as to like whether that was sort of misplaced or whether that's even possible in media generally. I think that's kind of, that's a different type of conversation. But it did sort of result in like these types of programs that were designed to reconnect British institutions with broader society being kind of concentrated entirely on pretty mundane, well, not even mundane, but just very bizarre ways of trying to reassert that. And lots of it was kind of Brexit arguments, or it was about, I think, like early culture war stuff, but lots of the sort of
just
laying
like
the groundwork,
grabbing the public by the lapels and being like, what the fuck do you bastards care
I think,
about?
Yeah. And like as a result, it's kind of, you look at sort of media stuff now, I think Question Time's a really good example of it, where it all feels really messy and disjointed, and you're sort of watching it being like, well, who is this for? And why are we watching it? And why is like the CEO of Pure Gym like talking about why we need to sort of like, why we need to give all of Gaza to Israel? And it's like, and I think there is a way that you can connect that to the reckoning that the BBC had to confront, on the basis that, they believe that they had to reconnect with the public, but didn't really know how to do that. And in any case, like I do think that like the broader existential crisis of Newsnight that's touched on very briefly in this is actually quite a good insight into whether it relates to the Andrew stuff. I'm not kind of convinced about
Hussein,
that.
what you're talking about is, again, a better and more interesting movie.
Well, it's kind of like, again, it's like it goes back to like why doing movies about media stuff is really bad, and you just should not try. You shouldn't do it.
If you want a TV series about this that did do it quite well, also with Romola Garai, by the way, is The Hour, which was like a BBC series about sort of 1960s Newsnight, essentially. It was really good, and then they didn't realize and they cancelled it after like 2 seasons.
They needed to do Question Time too.
It's the 1960s. Every politician is a nonce. We're interviewing them about something else.
We call it table stakes. And we say one of the things that's well observed in this film as well is the weird petulance of the royals. Like Andrew freaking out at some maid for arranging his teddy bears wrong.
Yeah, that's one of the ways in which they infantilize him, is that he has a bunch of stuffed animals on his bed that he's really particular about and he knows all the names. That's normal, actually.
If I was making this movie, I would have had him the second that she's like puts the stuffed animal in the wrong place. He would have put her in a sleeper hold and knocked her out, dragged her into a closet, and closed it.
I don't want to be too Dune 2 on here, but again, it could have been like Fade Ratha testing out his knife.
Yes.
The Epstein then kills himself because he was sad.
He gets a sudden attack of men's mental health.
Yes, indeed.
Which we experienced as news.
Yes.
Right? As everybody watching screens being like, holy shit, Jeffrey Epstein fucking Jeffed himself to a permanent Epstein.
And Andrew then sort of mutters to Amanda, I'm supposed to be talking to Mummy about my 60th birthday. She had big plans for me. There was going to be apple popping. There was going to be pin the tail on the donkey with a real donkey. So yeah, and also, this is mostly just an observation for Hesse, but did you feel that after Epstein died, it was like they got a DVS1 ambient set just cut over this movie for like 45 seconds?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the music is very Born Identity coded.
Yeah. Complete with the kind of like news tension theme of like that kind of vibe. Yeah.
Oh my god, it's Prince fucking Andrew.
Some eyeballs on the nuts.
It's just like they're all like looking around the office.
Jason Bourne knows where the nearest nonce is in any room he walks into.
Prince Andrew calling and being like, get some rest, Emily. You look tired.
This moment is like, and the sort of scenes leading to this, it is another example of like why you shouldn't do a movie like this in terms of like why you shouldn't do a media movie. Because like the only one that I reckon sort of does it well, All the President's Men, kind of really understands the genre of the paperwork movie in terms of like the whole film is supposed to be like incredibly mundane. You're like, the stakes of it are high, but it's kind of, you know, you have characters who are having to spend, you know, a good portion of their time just going through document after document after document. The whole process is supposed to be mundane. And the idea that like, you know, like in this 45-second scene where, or the 45 seconds I think that you're referencing, but perhaps it was like before, where these sort of documents are uncovered, and like the documents that are supposed to like detail Prince Andrew, and it's sort of just shown to you immediately. And like,
it's video game logic, kind of. It's like it just gives you what you need when you need it.
Well, the information is kind of just given to you already, which, I mean, again, this whole film is like, we all know exactly what happened.
Prince Andrew walking into the interview room, it's full of chest-high walls and health packs.
But it's like, there's no sort of like big discovery that doesn't sort of like usurp everything. Every answer is sort of given to you. You can see the original footage on YouTube, and it's like a lot more compelling.
This is the thing, right? Like the paparazzi guy gets the kind of most interesting line in the movie, and the thing that kind of is a more interesting question, which is when he's like, yeah, I've been taking photos of this for years and no one cared. None of this required that much legwork, right? And All the President's Men is interesting because it requires a lot of like phone calls and a lot of like meeting sources and stuff to try and confirm and like trip people up and stuff. Whereas they have the thing that they need from minute one. And as they're planning this interview, the Newsnight producer's whole lead is just go in early and aggressive by being like, these are the photos of you being a fucking nonce. Yes or no? And like,
because they have to constantly like invent stakes for it, right? So as they go to meet at the palace, I believe, I can't remember, one of you alluded to this line before, where Emily Maitlis says, "I've got this. How difficult could it be?" Talking to the Queen's son about his relationship with a convicted sex offender in Buckingham Palace. And
there's a terrible Gillian Anderson. She says it way sexier than that.
It turns out it was super easy to do.
It turns out it's one of the easiest things you could possibly do.
Sam McAllister has to have a big speech where she like talks Andrew into it to his face, where she's like, hey, everybody thinks you're a fucking nonce.
Yeah.
And that's basically, that's it. Like,
Do you know what they do to nonces on the wing, Andrew? You're going to have to go in a fucking seg unless you go on Newsnight and sort this out.
dangling VP status in front of Prince Andrew, yeah.
Yeah.
So the speech basically is, social media means everybody has a voice now. And then like Princess Eugenie is like, I'm on Twitter, Daddy, and they're saying the most awful things about you. And he's like, well, yes, I guess I'll go do the paedophile interview, I suppose. yeah, we're right. More or
They're
less.
saying worse things than they said about my hat at the wedding.
And Amanda keeps saying like, whoa, this is great. As soon as he does the pedophile interview, everyone's going to love him.
Jason, the one smart character in this movie, is just like, this is such a terrible idea, I have to resign now.
Yeah,
like,
he quits.
this is like, I can't march our boss into this minefield with you.
It's going to be fantastic, Andrew. You're going to go on the BBC and you're going to say, I'm not a paedophile. Oh, you want me to say I'm not a paedophile?
Can we practice a few times? Another thing, like, as to the stakes and like the fact that they have these like crazy, they keep inventing these crazy stakes. Like even in the first scene when the photographer are running and putting these like this little action scene in. It's movies like this, you don't really need stakes other than the story, and which is why they picked the wrong story, because
That's
nothing
true.
really happens because of this. Like Spotlight is another movie that does this type of movie really well, I think. And it's because like the stakes are, you want to see the people who are molesting kids in the Catholic Church, you want to see them like be held to account in a way that like is very different from this movie. Because I mean, again, it's the same, like everyone knew, but it's not like they're the prince and they could literally just like, hide in a big tower from everyone.
As far as practicing for the interview goes, like you mentioned that, Riley, they do this. Like the BBC set up a kind of like Hereford style kill house to like prep for this. Where like as soon as they know the interview conditions, where it's like, oh, there's 2 chairs 6 feet apart, they like tape this shit out like they're about to go and kill Osama bin Laden. Like,
Yeah. The dog that interviewed Osama bin Laden.
The first scene of The Killer is just like they're in the same exact room.
yeah, why did you need to diagram this out to rehearse it? Like, do you not know what 2 chairs facing each other looks
There's
like?
like tape on the ground marking
Yeah.
I thought it was weird when Emily, Sam, and Esme came into the interview room, like cutting the pie, breaching and clearing.
Yeah. It's just a Kevin Hart there with a stopwatch. Not quick enough, mateless. Run it again. You're dead. Run it again.
Emily Maitlis asking Billy Piper in the first scene to test her, what color is the boathouse at Hereford?
Yeah.
It's the fucking FNG, sir.
Draw it again. It's just a Brexit argument. Draw it again.
What kind of name is Mateless anyway?
You know what's just happened? Princess Michael of Kent shot you in the back of the head. It's because you didn't check your corners.
I think has been pointed out by basically everyone on this call right now. None of the stakes really stick.
Yeah.
Because they keep hammering the, oh God, what if he's really good thing. They actually say, but what if he's good? And like, because they want you to, the viewer, to be like, oh God, what if he's good? What if he really what if he does the interview really well and then comes off super, super well himself?
As though we didn't see the interview.
As
Yeah.
though it didn't happen.
The first sentence of the interview, again, it's the funniest, one of the funniest moments of the movie. She's like, hello, Prince Andrew, you finally decided to speak out. And like it cuts to one of the other producers and he's like, he's fucking killing it. We're fucked.
yeah. The stakes here, the BBC are worried he's just going to like apologize, right? And be charming, but mostly just be like, yeah, like boundless regret. I feel bad.
Boundless regret, but I don't admit to anything, but I'm sorry.
Yeah. There's serious errors of judgment. I feel terrible for everyone involved. All of this, right? Which I don't know if there was a way for the real Prince Andrew to have threaded that needle. But the key distinction is that he never would have because he's not that person and the royals don't let you be that kind of person. And the movie does its best to get to that, but not very subtly, you know?
Yeah.
He's mostly like throwing a tantrum about his stuffed animal. You know?
Exactly. And it's like the destiny of the interview was set at the very beginning because, as we've said many times, the man's a fucking idiot.
Yes.
And so constantly playing this up as though it could go either way. Hold on to your seats. This is so important. Sort of misses the fact that the man's a fucking idiot. The interview itself sort of then happens. They have to create the stakes like he's not a colossal moron.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as like the I don't sweat line comes out, you can kind of see Keeley Hawes finally realize I've made a terrible mistake.
Yeah, well, what's really interesting is they try and create more stakes by being like, is like Mateless fucking this up by not immediately going on the attack and like coming over the table at him and like threatening to like chef him up, right? And no, she's fine.
It's fine. Also, we talked a lot about the interview portion, but I looked into this and Prince Andrew did a Lunch with the FT interview in 2009 in New York.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Which I have some of in front of me here.
Guy loves dinner.
He's crazy about lunch.
Shout out to the FT. When are they getting their sort of like, you know...
Well, I suggest that so basically, like, Prince Andrew's job in 2009 was to go be a kind of ambassador for British business generally. Again, that would have been really interesting to be like, hey, also, what's the connection of the royal family to like supporting British arms sales, in Yemen?
What have you been up to in Uzbekistan, my guy?
Yeah,
like,
so-
I had a massive plov.
I was actually able to eat in its entirety. It took me 4 hours. A plov for an entire wedding. They were very pissed. They said, wow, that white boy has shocked us by eating massive plov.
Member of the British royal family shocks Uzbek wedding by eating plov in perfect Uzbek.
They told me I was going to be the talk of Dushanbe when I went to Tajikistan. I suggest that New York is an unusual stop for someone with years of exposure to parts of the world where British businesses usually request more help opening doors. Yeah, New York was a weird place for you to be in 2009 if your job is to, like, sell arms to Uzbekistan.
yeah, grease and palms.
Yeah. The need for me to intervene here is minute, he admits. As someone whose friends include the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi, he can be seen more at home in the Middle East and Asia. Until the dispute in August over Scotland's release of the Lockerbie bomber, Prince Andrew has been considered to represent the UK at Libya's celebrations for the 40th anniversary of the coup that brought Muammar Gaddafi to power.
Oh, rancid vibes in that tent.
Yeah.
The smell alone.
God, him and Gaddafi could have gotten up to some fun pedophile antics, though.
Like a buddy cop movie.
Yeah.
The opposite of a buddy villain movie.
Yeah.
The ability to work with countries with which British diplomats may have had rockier relationships is something he highlights, pointing to a 2008 visit to Sakhalin, where he attended the opening ceremony for a Russian liquefied natural gas plant.
What is that ceremony like? Are we talking like Beijing Olympic style, like 800 drummers, pyrotechnics?
You get a Russian 21-gun salute, which is one guy shooting a Markov in a concrete room with a drain in the floor.
Yeah, well, no, it's 21 rifles, but only one of them is loaded. But each one of them is pointed at one of the guests.
The 21-gun salute is, it's 21 rifles, but all of them have had different crucial parts sold to pay for someone's villa in Nicosia. So, 5 minutes of conversation with Dmitry Medvedev were invaluable in preparing the Russian president for the G20 summit in London, he argues. Quote, he's a young man with no experience of that sort of environment. The ability to walk through the door and see a smiling face he knew made all the difference. So he was like, I'm going to make Dmitry Medvedev feel like he's among friends at the G20.
Cool.
Basically.
He's like a fucking service dog.
Prince Andrew fucked Dmitry Medvedev. This is what we're taking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Greek warrior style to impart his knowledge of the G20 summit.
And again, like, this is the thing. He is the most suspicious man in the world. And, like, to invent this tension with Mateless, where the producers are like, no, you have to go in there like Kendrick Lamar, is like, when instead you can just, like, very lightly tap on the door and he immediately volunteers, oh, yeah, we were, like, fucking spit roasting miners with Gaddafi.
Yeah.
He says he's in New York to highlight the role of British businesses in employing 1 million Americans and to argue for a coordinated transatlantic approach to financial regulation.
That's cool. Where are you staying? Airbnb or?
I don't know. He's got a friend who lives around there.
Premier
Arguing
in.
for a transatlantic approach to financial like, what does that fucking mean? Like,
Well, there isn't one of those, so.
yeah.
So, on a previous meeting when he'd been in Davos, he'd been brave enough to declare that the Bernie Madoff scandal, quote, couldn't happen in London, and then returns to his defense of the principles-based regulation preferred in the city. Polishing off the last of his bread rolls, this is the most vicious the FT
He's just
generally
been
gets.
eating bread the whole time. That's
Yeah.
the twist here.
Non-stop housing bread rolls.
He finished all the bread.
Fucking miners with Gaddafi.
Mummy doesn't always let me have this much bread.
Can I get like a 5th order of bread rolls, please? I have some more crimes to confess. You normally only get this out of mob guys. That
Yeah.
combination of like carb loading and like voluntarily confessing to serious crimes is normally only a feature of like the mob.
Yeah.
They were at Cipriani, and he was like, no, they don't have my favorite lunch, which is enough plov to feed 140. So, polishing off the last of the bread rolls, he ate all of them, too. He didn't give the FT journalist one. He was just like, gets the bread rolls, puts them in front of him, and just starts munching through
Does
them.
it say what restaurant they're at?
Yeah, Cipriani.
Oh my god.
The FT really is Capital talking to itself, but sometimes Capital says to itself, did that motherfucker just eat all the bread rolls?
He launches into a discussion about free-floating exchange rates, the perils of protectionism, and a back-to-basics explanation of what banks do with their savers' money that bordered on teaching this financial journalist how to suck eggs.
Wow, okay.
That's the most vicious I've ever seen the FT get directly.
Which I had to suck eggs because he'd eaten all the bread rolls.
When they brought out the eggs, he sucked them for me.
Yeah.
Prince Andrew snowballing an egg into an FT journalist's mouth.
I'm looking at the bread basket that Cipriani gives you. I'm looking at a picture of it online, and it is a full loaf of bread. Full loaf of bread and like 30 breadsticks. It's like,
The funny thing was, Prince Andrew at the other part of the article was like, no starters, I'm too busy. And then so the FT journalist is like, I kind of wanted to get starters. And he's like, no, too busy for starters. I'm going to eat all the bread. That's going to be it.
Learning from this that Prince Andrew, the Duke of York, aside from a pedophile, is also a terrible hang.
So, as our food arrives, asking about his routine, traveling for 100 to 120 days a year, sometimes squeezing 16 meetings into a 2-day visit. Sorry, this is the best. Sawing at his food with a fork, the Duke answers.
Wow, they really hate this guy.
He's like barely house trained.
He doesn't know what a knife is. It's because people keep stealing all the silverware from Buckingham Palace. He's never seen it before.
Yeah, it's like, this is a guy who, like, again, the FT has politely portrayed as a man who still wears pull-ups, basically.
Who did this interview? I need to know who the kind of British financial Isaac Chotiner is.
It was Andrew Edgecliffe Johnson.
I am now terrified of this motherfucker. If I hear word one that Andrew Edgecliffe Johnson wants to interview me, I am fleeing the fucking country.
Also, Edgecliffe, what a name.
Yeah,
huh?
if he sends you an invite asking whether you want to go out for dinner, just like avoid that at all costs.
Yeah.
Unless like the restaurant's really good, in which case I'm sure you'll be fine.
Taking Andrew Edgecliffe Johnson to the Shalimar Kebab house, sawing at her food with a wooden fork.
Yeah. Prince Andrew listlessly gazed over to the chicken marinating in a paint bucket.
So I got to go back to this. As our sawing at his food with a fork, the Duke says the key is the painstaking preparation that goes into each trip. He adds that, quote, this business of engagement is something his family has a genetic predisposition to.
Oh my god, dude.
Oh my god.
He has epigenetic memory of like sort of shaking hands and being like, oh, yes, it's perfectly charming. We have one of those as well.
Yeah.
This hints at the same kind of obliviousness that's in the movie, where like Mateless's thing is to essentially like give him enough rope, right? Where she's like, do you want to apologize to the child you nonce? And he's like, no, I don't think I should do that.
She just gives him, and this is what happened in the actual interview,
Yeah.
of course, because again, the climax of the movie is something everyone has already seen. The interview.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, we know that what happens is she gives him enough rope to hang himself, and he's like, I'm bloody good at tying nooses. Let me show you.
Yeah.
And what, you don't think this will work? I'll hang myself with it just to show you, you idiot.
Learned this shit from Muammar Gaddafi.
This is kind of like if the movie JFK had been about Lee Harvey Oswald preparing to shoot JFK in the head. And he's like, I just don't know if I can do it. I don't know if it's possible.
Lee Harvey Oswald shooting JFK in the head was impressive. This is just it's sad.
I can't do this myself. I'll need at least one, maybe two other guys helping out.
Oh, also, Riley, in terms of like funny like freeze frames on computers and stuff, is there's a scene after the interview where Billy Piper is looking at the reflections of like a wall of tweets of people tweeting about it.
The tweets are my favorite thing.
Yeah, on her phone it says, you can see it for 1 second. One of the tweets is, we need better prison guards.
The tweet thing is great because that's her big like moment of victory after the interview goes out, right? Is in the BBC's like socials room where they run the Twitter from, seeing the feeds light up. And my favorite detail about that is that still, in like however many years of Twitter being a thing, movies have not figured out a way to demonstrate that a tweet is popping off other than the little like whistle noise. And so it leaves you with the idea that the BBC Twitter room where they run the Twitter just leaves the notifications with sound on all the time because it's like three guys sitting at laptops and like you just hear it like constantly. It's like, Jesus, okay, this is at some point this is an occupational like
they have those
health and
headphones
safety
on
thing.
that like people on the airport tarmacs have. I'm
like the BBC like Twitter mentat, you know.
Well, that's why none of the guys who run the Have I Got News for Twitter account can ever get a good one off. It's because they're so distracted by all the noises going off constantly. They're like a dog in a fireworks show.
Sounds like a hydroelectric dam in there. It's like crazy.
Yeah.
So one more thing from the FT interview, and then we go back to the movie. The Duke's office has asked PricewaterhouseCoopers about 18 months ago to identify exactly what value his role creates. Quote, we're trying to come up with a model, but I'm not sure that it's going to work. I'd love to be able to say that I've been responsible for 10 billion pounds of business or another 250 jobs coming to the UK or whatever, but the companies themselves don't know.
Fantastic.
What does this guy do? No one knows what I do. As you're trying to cut a pizza with a fork, no one knows what I do. Okay?
My job is to be friends with some of the worst guys in the world. Hey, he said while trying to cut a beef Wellington with a teaspoon.
Shoveling gnocchi loose into his own mouth.
Phone ringing, Jeffrey Epstein's contact picture on it.
Oh, it's just my mother.
No one knows what I do.
Ominously.
No one knows what I do. He said, drinking a candle.
The second breadbasket arrived at that point.
Walking off, tablecloth trailing after him.
Yeah. Putting his hand into a pot of spaghetti and being like, oh, I thought that was a witch's hair. Okay, so much drama is also made of like, oh, the interview's over. He's like, well, that went well. And which he actually would have. He actually did. Yeah.
Amanda Thirska's the one who's like,
oh no.
no, it didn't.
Much drama is made also of like, are they gonna get the SanDisk back to BBC HQ so the public?
Do like a sort of over-the-shoulder tracking shot on a moped of the guy driving back to Broadcasting House, and it's like,
why? Like that? Okay, at this point, it would have better to
was
like
a white Fiat Uno looms into shot.
It would have actually been better to have a movie of like, we have to get like a kind of heightened reality sort of like Shooter, right?
Yeah.
Movie where it's like, I have to get the Prince Andrew, or like Warriors, right? I have to get back to Broadcasting House and the Royals are going to be trying to kill me the entire time.
Yeah.
Like the Queen, like going up to the mic to play Nowhere to Run. Yeah. This is the thing. If you're Americans, you're Netflix, you have an infinite budget, and like just fucking straight out say, oh, the royal family might kill us.
Mm-hmm.
It would be a more entertaining movie. The stakes would make sense.
It would be funnier and would generate a hilarious lawsuit.
Also true.
Yeah,
So-
Prince Harry in an Apache helicopter looming above the road as you accelerate towards it on your moped.
Get Olivia Colman to play the queen, and she just like pulls out dual wielding Desert Eagles.
Prepare for the deagling of a lifetime, you bitch.
I'm gonna tell you what I told Diana. Goodbye.
Buckle up, motherfucker.
She's our best driver.
No, that's Prince Philip.
And then, anyway, so we get to the real victory. Here's the real victory, the real stakes of the movie. People like Sam McAllister at work now.
Yeah, Esme Wren says
Whoa.
does a nice tweet about her,
Yeah.
and she's like, "Damn, my insanely hot boss finally respects me."
But also, do we remember right that the consequences of this interview were like, a couple days later, Andrew was stripped of his royal titles until he was like given all of his privileges back because they remembered that they hate Harry more because he married a black woman.
Yeah, the way that they do this, right, is that he's in the bath thinking that went well, and then the interview goes live and his phone like blows up. He like comes out of the bath and he's like standing there wet and naked. There's a really unexpected shot of like Prince Andrew ass.
And he's like, God, I shouldn't have bought a Samsung Galaxy S7.
Rufus Sewell, normal shaped ass. I'll say that.
Not like fucking Rory Kinnear.
No. Amongst like
No.
very talented British actors of that sort of like gender and age, yeah, very normal ass. And that's like his moment of like emasculation and humiliation. Is like, I underestimated these fierce women and they put me in my place. And then he goes to like in for an unseen interview with his mum, who is like, you're fired on account of the non shit.
Yeah, and then, but yeah, it's like, you're not so much fired as the stakes are Prince Andrew.
You're off the team. You're benched.
Prince Andrew was benched for like 7 months until they were like, oh yeah, Prince Harry married a black lady. We hate him more, and we're sometimes short of royals, so you can come be with us in public again.
Yeah. This is like displayed through a climactic like facts from royal communications. However, the thing I want to talk about, right, is Sam's big victory is she like gets the like approving tweet from like her posh BBC bosses, and they're like, you're one of us now, kind of. And she goes back to, working class London, where she goes to the kebab house, and boss man in the kebab house is like, yo, did you see this news thing? Because I love the royals, apparently. I would have loved to have been there when they filmed that. Which is an insane thing to say or think.
Whoever booked that interview is a great booker.
I bet she sent an incredible email, huh? Whoa.
Why is he Italian?
That is a lot more interesting than more about Brexit, innit? Donna or Shish?
Yeah, really reestablishes Newsnight as like a serious.
Well, this is the thing, because at the end credit, I was just like, I didn't realize this, but she's now like, she isn't at Newsnight anymore.
Well, she's not at Newsnight anymore, partly because of like the woke blob or whatever, but partly because she teaches, the film says negotiation, which is partly true, but she teaches at LSE's law program because she was already a barrister before she got that job.
Ah, okay.
Something which never shows up in the movie and which would maybe have undercut a little bit the like, oh, if I don't get this fucking interview, I'll die of being poor thing.
They're going to put me in the workhouse. Pick an outcome, they is.
She should have been wearing the wig the whole time.
University of Edinburgh. Like, I don't know what to tell you.
The reason, well, it's not Oxbridge, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Fucking owned.
It was a better law school than I went to, I'll tell you that.
I've always been excluded by the Doxbridge Mafia.
Not even Durham. But no, the reason why I brought this up was because, like, if the beginning of like the film sort of what it's seemingly trying to do is reinforce the idea I'm not saying this does it intentionally, but like this is the way that it's structured, is one of like, the BBC being this kind of invaluable institution, the only place where like, despite all the disparaging comments and despite all the sort of demands and pressures put on it, because again, like at the beginning of the film, the way that like the stakes are sort of set up is like, I think for anyone who's an outsider who is not aware of like, how British media works, and be very thankful for that. The idea is that, oh no, they're going to shut a news night. Like,
oh fuck
No.
and this is where the Sorkin stuff becomes a real thing, because in the Newsroom season 1, like that's the whole conceit. They bring in the new producer who also is a Newsnight type of person to be like this like Republican who's lost the good Republican like politics and is just disillusioned, needs this like perky British woman to save him from himself. And in doing so, they reinvent Newsnight into this like invaluable force. And the way that this is framed is really similar in terms of, oh, they're going to shut down Newsnight unless like it can prove that it's useful to like the Greek kebab man the Italian kebab man who's like working.
Unless we can come up with £50,000 in the next week, which is the exact same price as the dodgeball competition.
The other thing, right, is that it's not even like Newsnight then stopped just booking the same Brexit argument.
No,
they went back to doing that.
Well, this is what I was going to say, which is that like it doesn't, after this happened, they just went back to doing and they still just continue to do that. And also they've now just got the shit cut out of them, right? They're now like basically going to be a synopsis of like the 6 p.m. like normal BBC news from like what I remember.
But delivered by a sterner woman.
Well, but also that sterner woman isn't even on Newsnight anymore. She's doing like a podcast.
You're watching the kinky BBC News.
Growth industry, baby.
Everyone, like the stakes of it are even more minimal knowing what we know now, because it was kind of like, okay, well, you sort of embarrassed this guy who was already very embarrassing for a little
he
bit.
got like benched for a bit. They do the like sort of after text
and then you all
thing.
got like jobs afterwards. Okay, cool.
Yeah. I mean, hard to have another ending than that with British media. The thing I think about a lot is Sam McAllister in this reminds me of Rebecca Brooks, right? The former editor of The Sun, where it's like no one in this country knows what being working class is or means, and so anyone who is able to convincingly perform that affect, which mostly seems to involve in having absolutely fried hair and like wearing leopard print. If you can do that, it doesn't matter if you work for Newsnight, if you're a barrister, if you like edit one of the most like powerful newspapers in the country, you are automatically like a permanent outsider. And it's like, that's never been true in that way.
No, but it's I think you're right in the sense of like the way in which you kind of navigate and the way in which you survive in media if you are not someone who like already comes from a very particular kind of, a very specific kind of wealthy background.
Yeah.
Is to be able to sort of like perform a caricature of working classness that isn't real,
for sure.
but also know when to rein it in. You know how not to scare off the hose, right? That's sort of what you've got to do in order to sort of have a sustainable career. And like the character, the Sam McAllister in this film, I don't know who she is in real life, so I can't like say anything, but in this film, the Sam McAllister character knows how not to scare off her boss.
I'd be interested in a movie that kind of approached that as like how to inhabit that kind of persona, that worksona, if you like.
Yeah, what if it was the talented Mr. Ripley?
I
What
mean,
if the talented Mr.
It
Ripley
kind of could
was-
be, like, yeah.
A scene, it's a little off point from this, but a scene that we've kind of glossed over that I would like to talk about a little bit is when Emily Maitlis asks Billy Piper to talk to her on the studio, and she's like, as she's telling them to adjust the studio lights, she's like, a little bit more red, and then she turns to Billy Piper and she's like, girls like us have to stick together, and then like winks, and then it zooms out and you see that Emily Matlis has just directed them to put the trans flag colors in the studio. I was like, okay, hang on.
Hidden messages. Anyway, I think we've scooped today.
I feel scooped.
I think we've scooped all we can get out of the film Scoop.
Yeah.
I would like a movie called Scoop where it's about a Turkish ice cream man.
Oh, yeah.
That's my take on it.
Turkish ice cream man really emotionally engaged in that interview.
Just 2 hours of that.
But Turkish ice cream man, like, trying to give Sam McAllister an ice cream cone because he's really impressed by the news, but
he cannot but take it away.
Oi, boss man, 2 scoops of pistachio.
He lives by a code.
All right. Hesse, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us
Thank you for
today.
having me. Always a pleasure.
I hope you enjoyed watching Scoop, the best movie that you have seen this year, legitimately.
Absolutely. It's the best movie I've ever seen in my
I
life.
mean, besides another movie, which you may or may not have watched depending, or heard about us talk about, but we didn't actually do it. We didn't talk about it. Or,
No.
No, never. We never talked about Lyft.
If you think we did, you would just,
You're wrong.
Delusional.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were actually in a Pizza Express. When that episode came out, we were in a Pizza
We were
Express.
all in the
Woking.
Pizza Express in
Yeah,
Woking.
uh-huh.
No, Hesse, thank you very much again for coming on. Thank you, everyone out there, for listening. By the way, this episode was recorded on Monday, the 13th of May, and will be coming out in a couple of weeks, which is why there was 2 movie episodes this month.
We're just having fun.
Yeah, we're
That's the
having fun
thing.
with
We're
it.
having fun. And the thing is, right, I actually,
Yeah.
in the war, I suffered an overdose of Kevin Hart movies. And so I can't actually watch Kevin
You
Hart.
can't actually laugh because you've laughed too much.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I can't lift.
we'll lift all of you, and we'll scoop all of you as well
Yeah, lift, laugh, love.
in a couple of days.
Yeah, that's
If this comes out before the 29th of May, who knows if there will be tickets left? They've gone very, very fast to the live show.
It's almost sold out. People really want to see us.
At the time of recording, it's almost sold out. Maybe at the time of listening, who knows if it's almost sold out? Give it a check.
Yeah.
And so we'll be doing that on the 29th, reading Liz Truss's book with Nish Kumar. I have to read that book soon.
Quick question. How heavy of a metal collar can I expense as a business cost?
I think a couple of kilos.
Cool.
Heavy is the neck that wears the
Yeah,
collar.
that's going to be really hefty. Yeah.
All right. We are going to see you in a couple of short days on the free episode. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.